I can still remember it like yesterday. My father encouraging me to get a government job. I was still in my early teens, contemplating my future and the paths I should take in life. My father spoke with the kind of certainty that only comes from a man who has lived long enough to know what struggle feels like. He told me about the security. He told me about the steady salary, about the perks, and about the benefits. He told me that once I get into the system, I wouldn't have to worry so much about life anymore. He knew nothing about being aligned. He knew nothing about passion or about purpose. But in his mind, that was the best advice he could give to his son. And you know what? I believed him. After all, this was my father, a man who had seen hardship in ways I had not yet experienced. A man who knew what it meant to live without guarantees. He knew life, or at least his interpretation of it based on his experiences. So when he spoke about safety, about stability, about having something certain, it sounded like wisdom. But as I got older, I began to understand something I could not see at that age. My father was not only speaking from wisdom, he was also speaking from experience. And experience can sometimes turn into fear without us realizing it. Not fear in a weak sense, but the fear man learns after life teaches him that nothing is promised. A fear that comes from growing up in lack. A fear that comes from living in a world where survival mattered more than dreams. A fear that comes from knowing what it feels like when there is no safety net. And I say this respectfully, because my father loved me. He wanted the best for me. But the best he knew was safety. And the older I got, the more I began to realize that in this world, safety and freedom are not always the same thing. In fact, many times the things that makes us feel safe are the very things that keeps us from being free. And as I grew older, I started watching people, watching life, watching the choices we make. I began to see the same pattern over and over again. People say they want freedom. People say they want to live their own life. People say they don't want to be controlled. But the moment freedom starts to look uncertain, the moment it starts to look risky, the moment it starts to require responsibility, most people step right back into the very thing they say they don't want. And let me tell you why. Because chains, as uncomfortable as they may be, at least feel familiar. Freedom sounds good when you talk about it, but freedom feels different when you have to live it. Freedom means you have to make decisions for yourself. Freedom means nobody to blame. Freedom means you can't hide behind the system, or behind your parents, or behind your job, or behind your past. And that kind of responsibility is heavier than most people realize. So what happens? People choose what feels safe, even if it keeps them stuck. You see it at work all the time. How many people wake up every morning going to a job they don't love, doing something they never dreamed of doing, living a life they never imagined for themselves, but they stay. Why? Because the paycheck feels safer than the unknown. You see it in relationships. People stay in situations they know are not healthy, they know are not right. People stay in relationships that are toxic, but they stay because starting over feels more frightening than staying where they are. You see it with identity. People hold on to titles, to positions, reputations, labels, not because those things make them feel happy, but because without them, they are lost. Without them, they don't know who they are. And if you go deeper than just personal life, if you really study history, you begin to understand that this mindset did not start with us. You see, there was a time when survival depended on obedience. There was a time when questioning authority could cost you everything. There was a time when being safe meant staying in line, doing what you were told, not taking chances, not stepping out of place. On the plantation, safety was not freedom. Safety meant you follow orders. Safety meant you stay where you were told. Safety meant you didn't ask questions. Freedom, on the other hand, was dangerous. Freedom meant uncertainty. Freedom meant hunger. Freedom meant being alone without protection. And when a people live like that long enough, generation after generation, The body may come out of chains, but the mind learns to depend on them. So even when the chains disappear, the need for security stays. Today, the chains don't look like iron anymore. They look like job titles. They look like status. They look like political loyalty. They look like social approval. They look like roles that we are afraid to lose. And the truth is, many of us are not being forced to stay where we are. We stay because we are afraid of what life would look like if we step outside of what feels safe. Even spiritually, the same thing happens. People say they want truth, but truth will shake the life you built on comfort. People say they want to grow, but growth will take you out of places that feel familiar. People say they want freedom, but freedom means you can't keep blaming everybody else for where you are. Even the scripture shows the same pattern. When the children of Israel left Egypt, they were no longer in chains. But freedom did not feel like celebration. Freedom felt like uncertainty. Freedom felt like the wilderness. Freedom felt like not knowing what tomorrow would bring. And what did they say? Let's go back. Yes, they wanted to go back. Not because Egypt was good, but because Egypt was familiar. That story is not just about history. That story is about human nature. Many people are not in chains anymore, but they still think like they are. And if we are honest, every one of us has areas in our life where we choose comfort over truth, security over growth, and safety over freedom. But if you really want to live free, there are some things you have to understand. Not slogans, not motivation, but real understanding. Here are 5 directives to help you understand what it means to truly be free. The first thing you must understand is that not everything that feels secure is meant for you. Some of us built our whole life around avoiding struggle, avoiding risk, avoiding discomfort. And after a while, we start calling that stability. But stability without purpose can turn into a cage. And many people don't realize they are trapped because the cage feels safe. The second thing you must understand is that some of your fears you carry are not even yours. They were passed down to you from people who loved you, people who wanted to protect you, people who went through hardship and did not want you to suffer the same thing the way that they did. But sometimes what protected them can limit you. And if you never question what you inherited, you may end up living a life that belongs to their fears instead of your own truth. The third thing you must understand is that freedom will always require responsibility. The moment you stop blaming your parents, your past, the system, or society, you also lose the excuse for staying the same. And that is why many people hold on to what keeps them stuck. Because as long as someone else is responsible, they don't have to face themselves. The fourth thing you must understand is that growth will take you out of places that feel familiar. Every new level of your life will feel uncomfortable at first, not because it is wrong, but because it is different. And if only you move when you feel safe, you may never move at all. The fifth thing you must understand is that freedom is not something someone gives to you. Freedom is something you carry inside yourself. It shows up in the way you think, in the way you decide, in the way you stand, even when standing alone would be easier to avoid. And the day you stop needing permission to become who you are, that is the day chains start losing their power. There comes a point in life where you begin to see things differently. Not because someone forced you to change, and not because the world suddenly become easier, but because experience teaches you that the choices we make are often shaped by what we fear more than what we truly want. Many of the paths we follow were chosen at a time when we were only trying to be safe. And there is nothing wrong with that, beloved. Survival is a real teacher. And for many of us, it was the first one we ever had. But there also comes a moment when you start to realize that the same things that once protected you can slowly begin to limit you. And the life you built to feel secure can begin to feel smaller than the life you know is possible. That moment does not come with noise. It does not come with applause. At most times, it comes quietly in your own thoughts, when you begin to ask yourself whether you are living the life you choose or the life you learn to accept. And that is not an easy question to face. Because freedom is not only about what is outside of you. Freedom is also about the courage to outgrow what once made you feel safe. Some people will stay where they are, and that is their journey. Some people will keep holding on to what feels certain, and there's no shame in that. But for those who feel that restlessness inside, that sense that something in you was meant for more than just surviving, there comes a time when you have to decide whether you keep living inside what feels secure, or whether you are willing to carry the responsibility that comes with becoming who you really are. And the day you begin to face that honestly, even if nothing around you changes yet, something inside of you already has. Freedom is not easy. Freedom is not always comfortable. Freedom does not come with guarantees. But chains, no matter how safe they may feel, they are still chains. This is the sacred curriculum. Lesson complete. Now, remember who you are.